Hi, I'm Logan Jones with J&H Aerospace. Normally you guys don't see me because I'm sitting behind the camera, but this time I got the opportunity to work with Stephen Regley on this wonderful model, Pageboy. It's designed for UMX style bricks. This is a classic model by Ken Willard, 010 indoor or outdoor model. But it has been redrawn to take all the UMX electronics, and it is a fun and fantastic airplane that we're going to get ready to build. Alright, now we're going to take a look at our Pageboy kit contents. To start, you will have your template for your landing gear printed out on this page. Do not throw this away. It's very important to have because all the bends are exact and they fit very well and tight. Your aluminum tubing for your wheel axles. Rubber bands for your wing mount, since it is rubber band along the top. So I can get this 1/16 heat shrink. That will be used for your push rod ends, and that should be it, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Two pieces of carbon tube. These will double for your push rods as well as your wing mount. Then we have your push rod ends, and then the leftovers of these will also be used for bending your landing gear. Your firewall, tail feathers, as well as a top hatch. I believe that one's the top hatch. Wheels, fuselage ribs, wing ribs, and your wing template. There will be two halves. They are etched on one side, specifically so you know where to place your ribs. Two fuselage halves, and the bottom and the top plate for the fuselage. And then you also want to make sure that you have hinge tape. That will be very important. Some of the materials you're going to be needing for this wonderful build is parchment paper. I would recommend at least 2 pairs of needle nose pliers. Makes sense later. Push rods are a little difficult. Makes it easier if you have bigger hands to have 2 sets of needle nose pliers. Set of tweezers, similar issue. Get into it a little later. I have 2 pairs of cutters, just because I like to have some of the smaller ones to get into the tighter places if I have to trim something, and the bigger ones for all my carbon and my push rod. Another optional good tool is hemostats. They're like a locking plier. They stay locked. Makes it a little bit easier to mess around with a few things. It's not necessarily essential, but they are nice to have. We do carry these on the store now. Of course, your Gorilla Glue, absolutely a must. Your accelerator, handy dandy pocket knife, a pair of scissors for your heat shrink, optional tool which is really nice to use is our new to the store plane. These make it really, really easy to cut in bevels for your control surfaces. And we stock them now, so they're really awesome to have. Some sort of cutting utensil, preferably a sharp new blade, just because I like to start every build with a fresh start fresh with a brand new blade every time. And then of course a sanding block. We do offer smaller sanding blocks on our store. They work really well. You can easily make this tool, but we also offer it for you guys just so you don't have to. And then we also heat gun for the heat shrink and handy dandy hot glue gun. Alright, to start we're going to be doing our wing first. Take our razor blade, kind of notch out the little bits of notches that hold it in place. You really don't need to do this, but it's nice just in case so you don't rip it out and damage your wing really. Then we're going to want to pop out your ribs. I normally start by just popping out a handful of them and working my way around to that. Best way to start that I have found, by the way, the etching, you guys can see that really well. There's a little etching that shows you where the ribs will be, and it also labels that the bottom of the wing is, which side the bottom of the wing is. Best way I found to shape your wing, just take your CA, put a little tiny drop here on the edge. Kind of work it right along there. Just leading edge down. And going back, since we already have a template on which way it's going to lie, and if you've lined it up properly to begin with, you can just do a small dabble down. And just let it fold and roll up into itself. And it will take the natural shape of your ribs really, really well. Just try to be careful to not have excessive amounts of glue, because that adds a lot of weight, as well as you'll glue yourself to your airplane. Another thing you can do if you're a little bit impatient, take your bottle of CA, just a drop right at all three ends. That's what I've found to work really well. And I will literally just keep going right down the line, following the same procedure for the rest of them until I get to the end. Right there. Speed it up. Back here. As you can see, it slowly will start to take its shape really, really nicely without adding a bunch of weight, without having to worry about really warping the wing around in any way. Keeps it fairly square. As you can see, folds it really nice and over. You set it back on your table. As long as your table is square, your wing won't have any twist in it in any way, which I found it to be really nice. The hardest part about these ribs comes when you're going to be doing the last one, where it'll actually join to the other wing. For that, you want to make sure your rib is really clean. This one I didn't do a very good job of cutting out, so it's got little ends on. But just quickly doing that. Give it a nice flush test fit. Should look and feel about right. So now, a little bit of my glue. Just a very fine, thin line. You don't have to use excessive amounts. It's not going to make it any stronger. It's just going to add a bunch of weight. Get it where it feels flush. I will set it along the table. Kind of run my finger along to make sure it feels right where it should be. You might have to do a little bit of sanding, but not much. And now we just got to repeat the same thing for the other side. So now that we've built both wing halves, we're going to go ahead and join them together. What I like to do is do a quick test fit, make sure that they're fitting properly. Line up the leading edge, the trailing edge. It should fit fairly close together. Now that we've done that nice little test fit, I'm going to take and smear just a little bit right here. Does not take much glue to really get them bonded together. I've yet to break my wing. Set it down, line it up, pinch it up. Few seconds. And because we're impatient, nice solid joint all the way through and through. And your leading edge and trailing edge lines up properly. So now that we've completed our wing, we're going to set it off to the side. Now that we have our fuselage sides set out and our formers, we're going to cut them out, just the little tabs. And that's just because I don't like trying to push any of my parts out. I like them just naturally to fall out of the templates. For the most part, they will every single time, but running a little cut just right along the tabs ensures that they always do. Nice and clean. I like to drag the parts out as I go just to get them out of the way, just so they don't get bounded up with anything else while I'm cutting them out. start, I'm going to pop out our servo tray. I'm going to be going ahead and using the balsa one. We do offer, or the ply one, we do offer a balsa one as well, just in case you want to go lighter, or whichever your preference really is. That'll be the first part that I'm going to try to pop in. And pop out this one. There are little tiny tabs, if you can see that. You do want to, if possible, cut them out, just because I worry about breaking parts when I try to pop them out forcefully. Falls right up. You will notice all of these parts are going to be tabbed, so that you can't put them in backwards, or upside down for that matter, just to make it easier on you guys. So you'll see there'll be a bigger tab and then a smaller tab orienting with the fuselage to match. I like to put a little test fit in. Fits quite nicely. This. Oops. That's the one for the back. Okay. Another little trick I like to do is take the insert out from this little guy, because it is square, and use that as kind of my little right angle, just to ensure that this is going in level. A lot of you will be using a spectrum brick or a brick of some sort, and some of them still have a gyro on there, and they'll kind of freak out a little bit if they're not perfectly level. properly. I like to just do these 3 pieces, so your servo tray, your front former, your rear former, and just do those 3 first before laying any of the other ones in. If you lay the other ones in and glue them in, your fuselage will have one side that'll kind of warp in. It just kind of looks kind of funny. It doesn't necessarily fly worse. It's just or any, doesn't make it fly bad. It's just something that's not appealing visually. But I also like to test fit everything as we go. Nice tight friction fit, full glue, everything's clicking right in, so I don't have to kind of finagle anything while I'm gluing, and just run a very thin bead right along the edge of the former. Top plate, line up. Away we go. As you can see, that keeps everything nice and square and lined up properly. So when we put in these little formers, everything will pinch together cleanly and it won't look like it's warped off to one side. Just somewhat very important, at least to some people, just to me. I like everything to look very clean. Just right there. So if you guys can see it. Oh. Put this together. Your piece, but I like to lay just a nice thin bead like before on. Just enough. Don't need an excessive amount. We're going to flip around to the other side and do it. Same thing to the other side. Best suggestion for putting in this piece is to literally have it sit there. Grab one side, grab the other side, pinch together, and then if you look at the ends, if you're putting even pressure, which will show on a square fuselage, your ends won't be, one won't be longer than the other. That's just the easiest way I've found to kind of get away with doing it that way. I haven't really come up with a better idea yet. Second, right up, still nice and square for you. So back plate out. Black one's one of the more easy ones. And this one, I'm just going to run a bead on the inside. Just a nice thin little droplet. Not too much, just enough. And now we'll take our firewall, cut the firewall out. This one I found to be a little more tricky, and I want to make sure that I can get my my motor mount itself in, so I will put only glue on one side. Still use the same method for pushing everything evenly together, but I will only be gluing the one side in first, so that the motor mount slides in a lot easier. It's okay when you release the pressure if it looks crooked. Don't worry about it, don't try to correct it. Remember, when you push the fuselage in, it'll go square. A nice little fit. Get it right about where we want it. Nice and easy and simple. And what I like to do . Glue two of the sides in. Same thing we did before on the motor mount, just so everything lines up. I'm going to go all the way around on this one just because I want to make sure everything gets lined up correctly. Now I will go back in very carefully on my bead right along those little edges that I've missed. Now we have all of our formers in. Next, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take our UMX board, actually power this up to figure out which side we have programmed for our rudder, our rudder and our elevator. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my radio here. Plug in my board. So not all UMX boards are going to be the same, but in this case, my elevator is on the left side. My rudder is on the right. Knowing that allows us to orient the board and orient our top plate the way that we want to. Plug our motor for a second. I'm just going to roughly put it in here for the moment. We're not going to glue anything in. This gives us the ability to line up our top plate, since we want our push rods to be going in an X pattern, crisscrossing each other. So you will know that basically, so there's less binding, and this will help us orient which side we want to go up. Like I said, it does not matter which side technically this goes up or down per airplane. It just matters depending on your UMX board that you have on hand. So, go ahead and pop that out. With that out of the way. Go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and glue it in. Best to not use excessive amounts of glue, because then you're going to glue yourself to your airplane. Next we will be taking our top canopy deck pieces and be gluing those in. I like to just kind of set them in place first to make sure I know exactly which way they go. And usually I start with the bottom one. It's a little easier to line up along with the motor plate. And if the sides are a little rough, take our sanding block real quick and just clean it up real quick. We're going to go ahead and set this off to the side and get ready to start bending up our landing gear. We're going to grab our rod ends and we're going to go ahead and cut those off. Careful not to shoot them off and lose them. Off to the side, then we're going to want to grab our needle nose, take our plans. I like to start with the top. Normally I start about the wire sitting evenly in the middle. One of the first things we want to do is check to see if our gear will even work in there. I accidentally slipped when I was bending it. with our second bend, so mine sits a little too wide. So what we're going to go ahead and do, just take our needle nose, and we're just going to put a tiny little bend in it. Just enough to pull some of it out. Enough. Something of the sort of that. Which I still did not pull out enough, but now we fit. So we're going to take our hot glue gun. I'm going to go ahead and try to lay it right along the bead right here. A little bit just along here. It's okay if you add a little extra, just because it's going to kind of act as a shock absorber for when you really get into the ground. And remember, hot glue's hot, so don't go touch it. That's all we want. Just enough to cover the wire and to hold it. Next, we're going to take our UMX brick. We are going to want to cut our little tab off, or warning tab, just because that will get in the way later on if you have push rods, or even get in the way of our gears. And it's not fun to have a gear issue with these little servos when you can't control your airplane. Just plop it in. You want to be careful, just depending on your board. If you take a look in there, this gear right here, if glued in wrong, it will rub up against the fuselage and you will not be able to control that control surface. So just try to keep mindful of that as much as possible. And then the best way to set how far forward or back this will be sitting, we're going to take our 1S battery. I'm going to set it in here, just like that. We're going to slide the board back till, if this falls, it won't come in contact with either of the gears. And that'll still have plenty of room to flow over and won't touch anything. So now that's kind of got our little mark. do is really does not need much to keep in there, but I'm going to just pull it up. Dash of hot glue. You don't need a ton of this stuff just because you're not flying fast, you're not flying with the gyro. And kind of just situate the board, being mindful still of that gear. And just double check. That's still got tons of clearance, and that's still got tons of room up there. So, alright, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to set our fuselage off to the side. We're going to go ahead and cut out our tail surfaces. If you're ever worried about breaking some of the smaller parts, break the scrap balsa kind of around it. It helps pop it out without breaking it. Just kind of one of the little easy things to do. Separate this. Alright, now we're going to want to take our razor plane and we're going to shave in a little bevel just so you can have up and down travel. You technically don't need to do this if you offset your elevator just a little bit more, but if you want a nice clean line, it's preferred. Also choose to do this with sandpaper and sand in a bevel. The razor plane just makes it really easy. Just even with like one or two passes, you can see it's cut a nice clean bevel in there. Just go over one more time. Sometimes. I'll go ahead and test fit it down here. I like to flip up the fuselage upside down just so I can kind of get my marks. Make sure it's kind of in the middle. Flip that around. I head out the right way. Alright, that being in the right spot, I'm going to go ahead and slide it back out. If you have a pen, you can take and mark 2 little dashes on where you believe center is. I just kind of like to look at it, and it'll normally run up right in between each spar, or not each spar, but wing rib, or fuselage rib. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and glue in our elevator. I like to kind of just do a little dabble right along here. If you leave it a little thick, then when you slide it in, it'll kind of fill into where it stops. Line it up. Nice and square, flush with the back. And in the middle. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to take a look at our board again. And we've already decided that this is our elevator servo, and this is going to be our rudder servo, or yeah, rudder servo. So we want to ensure that we orient our elevator to be diagonally across from the servo, where it crosses through in a X pattern. So it'll come out this side. That's just to ensure that, you tape it on the right way. Flip it upside down. Get a little piece of hinge tape. Find the end. Nice little gap so you have all the travel in the world. And I taped mine on the wrong way. So I gotta flip it over real quick. It's okay. Just try to be careful to break the wood. There we go. More than enough travel. Down and up. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our vertical. I'm going to glue that in. Nice light dab. It's very important to have something that's kind of square around you when you do this, just because you don't really want any bend in it. Look at this guy. This one I'm just going to sand off the tabs real quick, just so it's a little cleaner. This one I'm just going to kind of leave that gap, kind of show you. You can still kind of get away if you don't want to try to sand your vertical or take your plane and plane in a little bevel. All you have to do is have that just a little bit more of a gap. And you can see that's going to be more than enough to row. So next we're going to take this little guy. Do not throw this away. This is not trash. But it's just a little piece that's going to just slide it in here. Kicker because I'm impatient. Alright, so now that we have the tail surfaces on, now we're going to move on to the push rods. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut off your ends. I already did this because this is the same as our landing gear wire. So I already have two pre-cut. So I'm going to take one of them. We're just going to grab it and bend it up. If I can get it to... You can kind of see that. As long as it's mostly up in an upward direction, it will be fine. You can do the full 90, or you get to about there, and that's about good enough. But that's what you're aiming for. Don't lose these. If you have a second pair of needle nose pliers, also grab those. My hands are a little big, and I cut these a little small for myself. But that's kind of your end goal. I'm going to show you two ways of inserting these. One with a small pair of needle nose pliers, the other one with one of my other favorite tools, hemostats, because I have fairly large hands and working with fairly small models, they don't cooperate very well. in the hook. There's a little hole. I don't know if you guys can see the hole. That itty bitty hole. In. Kind of finagle it. Release. Helps when you're a little less shaky, but see if I can get that a little easier for you guys. Want to make sure you have enough room. You're not getting stuck anywhere. The last thing you want to do is be able to put a push rod in and get completely stuck. Then you don't have that control surface. Now the next one I'm going to show you on the needle nose pliers. Kind of in a tough spot, you can always kind of cheat and move the gear when it's not under power and roll the control horn into a spot where you can neglect it a little better. Do recommend buying the hemostats because then you don't have to worry about letting go of the losing pressure on the needle nose. Come on. Bloody hell. I'm going to grab the wider ones. They have a little bit more bite in them. I just like the little ones for the amount of room they give me. Hold on 1 second. Let's see here. Most hole, I believe. Yep, I'm trying to see if I can get it in there. Oops. Come on. There we go. As you can see, I much rather use the hemostats. I'm a little more skilled using those, but they still work. Technically, it's very easy to make a set. If you have a bunch of rubber bands at home, you can tie them around the edge of your pliers, the handles of your pliers, and they'll click right in. Alright. Next, we're going to take one of our carbon rods. Go ahead and do the rudder first. Found it much easier to go through the bottom, and leaving the bottom open I can see exactly how it's passing through and making sure it's not binding on anything. Now we come up the top, We can neglect it around how we so desire to get it over to that other end. I'm going to prop it up just like that for the time being. Going to grab my 1/16 heat shrink. I'm going to cut in just a nice little small piece. Yay big. That might be a little overkill, but more contact point, the better off you are anyway. Now comes the really tricky part. We have to put a dab of glue on the I'll show you guys why these come in so handy. But a small dab of glue on that without bonding it to the plastic mount. And then slide the heat shrink over the top. It's okay to take your time with it. I'm literally just going to smear just a little bit. Just enough. Grab my pair of needle nose real quick, just to have at the same time just enough so I can bond it just like that, keep it from touching anything. Kind of difficult to see, but as you can see, they're not touching any plastic. And if you have a friend, you can tell them to kick it for you. That can be very difficult without a friend. And we did get just the smallest little piece right there on the plastic. Something you will have to be careful for. I'm just going to be very gentle with my razor blade and rock it in just enough to unbond it, but not enough to hurt anything around it, because we have a lot of wires down there. We don't want anything to get hurt. Just sit there and rock it. You can come in on this way even. Sit there and rock it. And it'll come through. Right there. Very nicely secured. I'm going to actually roll that backwards. I can remember which way to roll it. Just so I can clean out that little bit more of glue and slide the shrink tube on top after I clean everything up. Give everything a nice solid bond. It's very crucial to put as little glue on that joint as possible, because it really doesn't need much to bond together, but just that little bit of excess has already bonded it to the plastic. And now we gotta work to get it off. And yes, it's probably more intelligent for me to plug in the battery and turn on the radio and hold full rudder deflection just to get this off, but sometimes I just don't feel it's necessary. wee little guys. We got that all cleaned up. Slide the heat shrink right over top. Sometimes you just gotta use a little tool to help you. Then we're gonna take our heat gun. Shrink up. Doesn't take long. Now we got that side done. The important part about this is we're going to go ahead and do the other side real quick. But we're not going to size this one for it at full deflection, even though I've already clearanced it. Because if you do that, then you're only going to have it going one way and not for very long. So make sure you center this back up before you do anything else. So I'll just center it up by plugging in the battery real quick. Center. I got something a little bit stuck in there, and it's getting stuck right on the blob in there. So I'm actually going to clean that up real quick while I'm thinking about it. Like I said, be very careful when we're cleaning anything up. Don't want to tear anything up. That should be just enough to give me enough room to pass. So that's what I care about. Okay. Alright. Now we're going to go back in and do the elevator one. Go ahead and insert rod. Oop, there we go. Go ahead and push this up a little bit. Get my shrink tube.
This is where you mentioned that longer push rod.
Yeah, so we went ahead and swapped out to a longer push rod because of how difficult it is to install the normal one. Because I decided I wanted to save that little bit of weight and chop it off, and now I'm realizing it's not worth it. So, go ahead and grab my hemostats again. Actually, I'm going to slide on the heat shrink partially. Take the heat down. Crank it up a little bit. Doesn't take long. And don't get everything too hot because you will damage either the board or you will cause the hot glue to melt and then everything comes free. Now that we have everything done on this side, it seems to be clear and free. Take a look at that underneath. Nice, clear and free. Now we're going to go work our way to the back and install protections in the back. First thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to cut our ends off. We want to leave ourselves a little bit of room just so we have plenty to play with. Put it there. That's more than enough. We can always go back and trim a little more off if you desire, but it's a lot easier to work with them when they're a little longer than a little too short. Set this out of the way. Get our push rod, control horns out. We're going to crack those open and free. Just so they're available. I'm going to go ahead, insert try to be careful. If you force something a little too strong, you can break off the ends. It's nice and on there, and it allows me to line it up here on the side for however I need to splice it in. So I'm already going to go ahead and cut this down right about here. Look, I cut a little more off, but right up there. Cut our my fitment. I do need to cut a little bit more off, but I have a general idea on where I want it to sit. I like to kind of, like I said, leave them a little long because it gives you a second to go back and cut it rather than everything being too short and then you have to start over. Take one good last measurement. Oops. Does better when you don't drop it. Use my little ones. I'll go up there. Easiest way I've found to install this is go ahead and leave this assembled, put a little dab of glue on the control horn first, just so we know that's going in nice and square. And go ahead and just install it. Drop a little accelerator down there. I'm going to slide this back. See if things like this a little better, but and get inserted right there with the push rod. We're going to square up the rudder so you can see how it's sitting level with everything. I'm going to take it and drop a little teensy bitsy drop. That's too much. That's okay. Give it a second. Push our heat shrink right over. Grab our heat gun. Should just shrink right. And now we just got to turn around and do the other, basically the same thing for the other side. Go. Dangle it a little bit just to get it to go in just the right way. Since this is nice and tight, makes it kind of easier for sliding in and doing the test fit on there. And I already know it'll be about right here. Go ahead and grab this out. Just a little bit of glue on each side. Technically can get away with just one side, but I like to do a little bit of overkill because I don't want it to pull out ever. up a little bit. It's always nice to have a friend when you really need an extra hand. Build with your friends. You'll never regret it. I promise. You just might end up building more airplanes than you intended to. Also, please use a heat gun. Do not use a lighter. You might set your airplane on fire. Learned that the hard way one time. It only took once. Alright, now that we have our push rods installed, I'm going to go ahead and plug in our battery just to make sure all of our control surfaces are still working. Just because we've worked with a lot of glue around them. It looks like we still have everything. And plenty of throw. So for our next step for putting on the motor, we're going to have to clean off this top adhesive. This came out of a UMX T28 Trojan. And Horizon is nice enough to use this fancy white glue that gets everywhere and never really wants to come off. So we're going to take our razor blade, kind of clean it up, just so we can mount it a little better. It's just the little things. There we go. See here, this side's pretty clean. I've already trimmed a little bit off the plastic off each side originally to get it out of the airplane. So. Alright, let's check our fitment. Seems to be pretty clean, nicely mounted right up there. So we're going to go ahead and mount it. This is a kind of a longer can motor, just because it came out of that other airplane. Most of them will fit a lot better than this. This is just what I had for the time being. And this airplane was a very dead airplane, so we decided to recycle it. So we're going to go ahead and take our hot glue. That wonderful hot glue. Put a little dab on this side. Bloop. It's a little much, but that's okay. A little dab on this side. Bloop. It's a little much, but that's okay. Push it down towards the motor, push it flush, all the way up and in. Count to like 10, and it should hold. One thing you will want to try to remember, I haven't gone over this yet, but when you unplug your motor, try to remember exactly which side it plugs into. One of the sides, it will work fantastically and actually plug in and have throttle function. The other way is just on throttle the whole way because you're connecting just the power of the ground, not a signal. Since this is a brushed motor, it only needs the signal and the power wire to work. Motor still says it's free. better for you guys. Should be a little glue indicating which side it goes in. Voila, kazaa. And I could theoretically put a little dab of hot glue in there. Doing so will ensure my motor stays plugged in, but I really don't want to run the risk of putting any extra friction upon my push rod, just because this wire is a little short, and I could go ahead and extend it, but we're trying to keep it completely, pull it out of one airplane, plug it into another. So it will work. It is functional. So the next part of this video, we're going to go ahead and do the final piece, which is our bottom plate. This is bottom plate. What we're going to want to go ahead and do, kind of get it lined up here with the start. It will meet this firewall. Go ahead and push, kind of rotate. You will have to kind of shave off a little bit for these, for the landing gear. So the best way to do that, I've found, is just kind of push gently, and it'll leave a little indentation on the wood. You can kind of see a little itty bitty indentation there, a little itty bitty indentation there. If you have a pen, that also works great. Otherwise, you take the razor blade, kind of can mark it that way too, just quick, with just a very simple line indicating where, not very deep into the wood, just a little itty bitty one. So you can come back. Go ahead and take a look, see how it fits. Can use a little bit more, so we're just going to go back, fine tune this one little side just because it needs a little bit more out. Just like that. Oops. As you can see, it fits nice and flush. The best way I've found to glue this to start will be to do the first section. Go ahead and lay it up and then roll it. Kind of like what we did with the wing strip, or wing spar, or not spars, but the wing ribs. And I like to get that first section really dialed in. Spend the time to set up your first section the best, because when you do that, everything else will fall into line perfectly. Nice and clean. Drop the accelerator just because we're impatient. And then, nice and secure, and I'm going to run the tip of my glue all the way down back here to the back. Just in one swoop go, do the first side and then the other side. It does not take much. you can kind of get away with kind of skipping out a little bit on it. It does track and spread really nicely. A little drop on the red. Go back to it here. Flip around to the other side real quick before it dries. Literally, we're just going to very gently line it up, square it up, push down. Everything should line up really, really well if you've made everything nice and square. So it only takes a few seconds because we've taken that time to really line it up. But as need be, you can just do little tack drops of accelerator if need be. I find it very useful to do so. One right there, right there. Alright. One thing I to show you guys is if you're not careful, you do need to trim off this back plate because it does go past where your elevator is. So I like to go right about there. I'll sit there and score it once nice and smooth. I'll just run a few passes over just so I don't puncture and hit the other piece, because I really don't want to damage it. And you can also sit there and then just kind of rock it. I know I didn't put glue that far back, so if you can get your blade under it, just sit there and it'll click right off. Nice and clean, nice and flush. If you feel really up to it, you can even sand it down, but you got to be careful because you have your hinge tape right there. You don't want to sand through your hinge tape. For the next part, we're going to be attaching the wheels and then running your wing mounts through. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and get started on mounting up our wheels. We'll go ahead and cut them out. It should be just one little tab. I like to go over them a few times, just make them fall right out nice and easy. Then you're going to take your wheel axle, a little bag, don't lose the little wheel axle. It's very easy to lose them, especially if they pop off real well. Go ahead and take this one, just for simplicity's sake. Slide it on. So don't lose it. Crush that end a little bit, but oops. Come on. cut out our other one.
Should be able to break it off.
Just by hand. So it just doesn't want to cut. Go ahead and take my all I'm doing right here is just opening up the hole a little bit, just because I was not the cleanest with my cut. If you take something like a pair of wire snips, they will completely crush, and then you'll be fighting it way more than just rolling it. To the other side. Now we have those on. Should be able to just slide the wheels over. Make sure they fit nice and well. So we're going to go ahead and slide our wheel axles off. I just like to slide them on for safekeeping. Drop it in. I'm not the best at this, but we're learning. Just close. I'm gonna go back and do another little drop on the other side. Should have no issues as long as I keep the glue out of the not the most square wheel, but hopefully it'll roll well enough to go off the ground. Take off the other side. Try not to lose the other side. That one's a lot better. This is what I should have done on the last one, but I did not think of it. And just a little extra drop, because I just did kind of more of a tacking drop. Another little drop accelerator. Rolls nice and smooth. Slide that off. Take it over to our axle. That one will track nice and straight, and I probably will redo this one off camera, but next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to trim up our ends and put a little dab of hot glue on each end to keep the wheels from falling off. So trim that right about there. I think I'll go about there. Take our hot glue gun and literally we'll just do a little bit on the end. Just enough. I don't know if you guys can even see that, but just enough to prevent the end from grabbing. Alright, now we're going to install the wing mounts. So we're just going to take our wire, go ahead and slide it through. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of extra just so I can trim it off afterwards. And then we're going to go ahead and glue it in. Side. Just a dabble. What I like to do is go about finger's length, and that's even a little bit of excessive, but fair amount to start with. And we're going to go ahead and do the back. Following the same process. Now that's complete, all we need to do, take our rubber bands, take our battery, plug everything in, and mount the wing on top. Go ahead and do that real quick just to show you guys. Battery just slides right in here. Take our wing. Yeah, these two are going to be just overkill. I have this obsession with making sure there's at least 4 rubber bands on every wing I ever own. No, I'm not. And that's it. That's all it takes to build your Pageboy. It's going to be a...
Hi, I'm Josh Finn. This is Hope. We are J&H Aerospace.
If you like this video, hit the like button.
Also, how about subscribe to our channel and check out jhaerospace.com for new free flight products and all of the tooling that you'll need to build them.
Thanks for watching.